What if your dog isn't just a pet, but part of a prophecy unfolding right now? There are moments when a dog does something that leaves its human frozen in awe, actions so precise, so impossibly timed, that they seem to defy logic. A nudge at the exact second danger approaches, a bark that saves a life, a gaze that seems to pierce straight through sorrow itself. To most, these moments feel like coincidence, instinct perhaps, but to the followers of Edgar Cayce, they may be something far more profound, signs of a prophecy now coming true. Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, entered self-induced trances throughout the early 1900s and gave over 14,000 psychic readings. His predictions described wars, medical discoveries, global upheavals, and even technologies that would not exist for decades, including, remarkably, a worldwide network of talking machines that could only describe today's internet. Hidden among those thousands of transcripts lies a series of lesser-known visions, messages not about politics or nations, but about the animals closest to humankind. In them, Cayce spoke of dogs, not merely as companions, but as spiritual collaborators destined to awaken when Earth itself entered a higher vibration. The four-legged guardians shall awaken when the Earth changes its song, Cayce reportedly said during a 1943 session. They will serve as bridges between the seen and the unseen. For decades, those words gathered dust, mentioned only in obscure study circles. But as the world began facing global pandemics, climate crisis, and a collective spiritual searching unlike any era before, many began to notice that something extraordinary was happening among our canine friends. When Cayce first described dogs as spiritual antennas, the idea seemed absurd. In the 1940s, science viewed animals through the lens of instinct and utility. Yet Cayce insisted that certain species, especially dogs, carried a natural link to higher consciousness, a sensitivity to energies invisible to the human eye. He spoke of three waves of awakening that would unfold in the far-off future. The first wave, he said, would grant dogs heightened perception, the ability to detect illness, emotional distress, or even approaching catastrophe long before humans were aware of it. The second would be marked by telepathic connection, silent communication between dogs and their people, where intention and thought would replace spoken command. The third wave would transform them into living healers, beings capable of transmuting emotional pain, cleansing environments of heavy energies, and anchoring harmony in homes and communities. At the time, few paid attention. Humanity was deep in World War II, and Cayce's vision of spiritually evolving dogs sounded poetic at best, delusional at worst. Yet he remained adamant. This awakening would coincide with an age of rapid technological expansion, global upheaval, and the dawning of what he called a new vibration of the Earth. If insights like this speak to you, you'll love what we explore on Mystic Podcast Cruise, where ancient prophecies meet modern mysteries. Tap subscribe and the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Now, back to the story. Fast forward to the early 2000s. Scientists began documenting phenomena that eerily echoed the first wave of Cayce's prophecy. Veterinarians across continents noticed dogs developing a peculiar emotional hypersensitivity. They reacted to subtle shifts in their owners' moods before any visible cues appeared. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a behavioral veterinarian, documented hundreds of cases. He described dogs that blocked doorways when their humans were about to face danger, animals that refused food moments before an accident, pets that woke sleeping families seconds before natural disasters. One case involved Elizabeth Santos of New Jersey and her golden retriever, Bobby. Each morning, Elizabeth would prepare for work, except on days when Bobby refused to let her leave. He would cry, push his body against the door, and refuse to move. Only later did Elizabeth realize a pattern. Those were the very days when major crises unfolded at her job or within her health. He wasn't being stubborn, she said. He was saving me. Similar stories emerged worldwide, dogs detecting cancers, predicting seizures, warning of heart attacks. Science tried to explain it through smell, subtle cues, or statistical flukes, yet the scale defied rational limits. Cayce's first wave had begun. If the first awakening was sensory, the second was telepathic. Owners began noticing their dogs responding to thoughts, not words. They would rise from sleep seconds before being called. They would appear at the door when their humans merely decided to return home. The British biologist Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a pioneer in morphic field theory, conducted over a decade of experiments documenting thousands of such cases. His famous subject, JT the fox terrier, consistently went to the window precisely when his owner, Pam Smart, formed the intention to come home. Not when she left, but when the thought itself occurred. No technology could explain this. The phenomenon transcended distance, schedule, and routine. It was as if dog and human shared a frequency beyond time and space. Military families reported the same. Soldiers overseas whose dogs grew restless on the exact days their units came under attack. Couples separated by continents who felt their pet's anxiety at identical moments of emotional distress. Sheldrake called it non-local communication, an exchange of information without a physical signal. Cayce might have called it the second wave of awakening. The third wave, according to Cayce, would be the most powerful. Dogs acting as energetic healers. Across hospitals, nursing homes, and therapy centers, staff began observing something extraordinary. Certain dogs would refuse to enter rooms heavy with despair until after a patient had passed or a conflict had resolved. Others would stand beside those in pain, trembling softly until the tension in the air seemed to dissolve. Reiki practitioners and energy therapists began including dogs in their sessions. One healer, Esther Campos, noticed that her shepherd mix, Isis, would lie at clients' feet during intense moments, absorbing what Esther described as dense vibrations. After each session, Isis would shake herself, drink water, and return renewed, as though she had processed the energy through her own field. Families reported the same behavior at home. Dogs pacing through rooms where arguments had occurred, then sighing deeply before settling down, leaving behind a tangible calm. A family in England documented their German shepherd, Max, performing nightly patrols after they moved into a century-old house filled with unease. He would pause in specific corners, whine softly, then exhale as if releasing tension. Weeks later, the nightmares that plagued the family stopped. When an energy specialist examined the home, he confirmed residual disturbances, precisely where Max had lingered. Cayce's energy-cleansing guardians were here. Every year, social media fills with stories of dogs performing feats that seem guided by invisible intelligence, animals saving babies from suffocation, alerting entire families to fires seconds before alarms sound, or tracking lost hikers across impossible terrain. One of the most striking cases occurred in Brazil in 2023. A young mutt named Baya awoke her owners in the dead of night, barking furiously and scratching their bedroom door. Annoyed, they assumed she wanted to go outside, but Baya darted instead to the nursery. Inside, their 6-month-old infant lay motionless, blue from a sudden apnea. Baya's frantic warning saved the child's life. Similar rescues have been catalogued by Dr. James Serpell at the University of Pennsylvania, who has recorded over 1,200 cases of dogs exhibiting what he terms precognitive behavior, awareness of events before they occur. These aren't acts of instinct, Serpell writes. They're responses to information our science can't yet measure. Cayce's prophecy extended beyond behavior. He claimed that many dogs incarnating during this period were advanced souls, choosing animal form to aid human transformation. He described them as beings of light-wearing fur, volunteers from higher planes who entered the physical world to teach unconditional love through example. This idea, once purely mystical, now resonates with millions who swear they recognize something almost human, even divine, in their dog's eyes. Shelters around the world have noted uncanny synchronicities between adopters and their chosen pets, animals that run directly to the person who recently lost a loved one, or those who appear just as someone decides to change their life. Staff often remark, "It's as if the dog picked the person, not the other way around." Could these be the emissaries Cayce foresaw? To understand why now, we return to Cayce's broader cosmology. He predicted that Earth would enter a new vibrational era in the early 21st century, a phase of accelerated consciousness he called the Great Awakening. According to his readings, every living species would respond to the planet's energetic shift. Humans would experience it as heightened intuition, empathy, and creative acceleration. Animals, tuned naturally to subtle frequencies, would mirror and magnify that transformation. Modern science may be catching up. The HeartMath Institute has demonstrated that large-scale emotional events, from global tragedies to collective meditations, generate measurable changes in Earth's electromagnetic field. Those waves appear to affect animals profoundly, particularly those bonded to humans. Dogs act as living antennas, explains researcher Dr. Rollin McCready. They sense and modulate planetary energy fluctuations that our instruments barely register. When humanity's emotions spike, fear during crisis, unity during mass prayer, dogs react instantly. They become stabilizers, grounding the emotional field shared between species. Quantum physicists now speak of a morphic field, a web of information connecting all living consciousness. Dr. Amit Goswami refers to dogs as natural quantum receivers, beings that translate subtle information into emotion and action. MRI studies at Duke University reveal synchronized brainwave patterns between dogs and their owners, even when separated by walls. When a person thinks of their pet with strong emotion, specific neural regions light up in both brains at once. This discovery aligns eerily with Cayce's words. When the talking machines connect all humans, the dogs shall awaken. The talking machines, clearly referencing the digital networks of today, have indeed connected humanity, and perhaps amplified the very field through which this telepathic bridge operates. Behavioral veterinarians noticed a surge of anomalies during the 2020 global lockdowns. Dogs became hyper-attuned to emotional shifts inside homes. Some refused to leave their owners' sides. Others developed new vocal patterns, short, expressive sounds researchers couldn't categorize. Dr. Sandra Molina in Madrid noted that in 2 years she received more reports of psychic canine behavior than in her entire prior career combined. It was as if the collective emotional charge of the pandemic activated something dormant, she said. Indeed, when human society fell silent, our dogs may have begun to listen for us in new ways, stepping fully into the role Cayce predicted, guardians of emotional balance amid global upheaval. Even the heavens seem to play a part. During solar eclipses, supermoons, and large-scale meditative events, animal researchers note spikes in unusual canine behavior. Synchronized howling, sudden stillness, prolonged eye contact, or spontaneous calm. Spiritual centers from Tibet to South America report resident dogs entering meditative trances during mass prayers. In one Buddhist monastery in Brasilia, the abbot described their dogs lying perfectly still throughout global peace meditations, radiating palpable serenity. When humanity focuses on light, said Lama Tenzin, the dogs amplify it. They are like tuning forks of love. Astrologers interpret the present era as a cosmic transition, a bridge between ages. In that view, dogs embody the stabilizing current guiding humanity through turbulence. Maria Helena Ramallo, a researcher of cosmic cycles, describes dogs as the first receivers of new frequencies arriving on Earth. They adapt faster than humans, serving as prototypes for the empathy-based consciousness emerging across species. Evolutionary biologists, though cautious, observe similar trends. They call it accelerated symbiotic evolution, when two species evolve in tandem to survive changing conditions. Dogs, they note, are developing behaviors that directly counter human stress and isolation, empathy, healing touch, emotional regulation. We might be witnessing evolution itself, not through competition, but through cooperation. For Cayce, this partnership was never about miracle tricks, it was preparation. He believed that as Earth entered higher vibration, the bond between humans and animals would serve as a training ground for unconditional love. He warned that many people would ignore or dismiss the signs, labeling them coincidence or superstition. Yet those who recognized them would unlock a deeper collaboration with their canine companions, one that could elevate both species. Today, animal communicators and energy coaches teach simple practices echoing Cayce's vision. Silent connection time. Spend 10 minutes each day sitting with your dog in quiet awareness. Mental messaging. Think a simple image or word. Water, walk, rest. Observe if your dog reacts before you speak. Emotional attunement. Notice how your dog mirrors your internal state. That mirroring is the conversation. Owners who adopt these practices often report measurable shifts: improved health, fewer behavioral issues, deeper calm in the home. Cayce's prophecy suggests that some of the most spiritually advanced dogs actively choose their human counterparts. They arrive through synchronicity: the stray who appears at your doorstep the week you lose someone, or the shelter dog who locks eyes with you as if recognizing an old friend. Many mystics interpret these encounters as pre-birth agreements, soul contracts formed before incarnation. The human agrees to offer shelter and companionship. The canine agrees to teach presence, forgiveness, and unconditional love. If you've ever felt that your dog found you rather than the other way around, you may already be living that sacred pact. Recent research adds another layer of wonder. When a dog and human gaze into each other's eyes, both bodies release oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers to infants. Heart rhythms begin to synchronize. Brain waves align. Cayce often said that love itself is the highest vibration, the universal frequency that connects all realms. If dogs are emissaries of unconditional love, then their biology is simply proof of what the soul already knows. Ironically, the same technology that distracts humanity, phones, networks, endless noise, may also amplify the energetic web-linking consciousness. Cayce's talking machines are now billions of connected devices pulsing with human thought. Quantum researchers propose that this electromagnetic surge strengthens morphic resonance across the planet, awakening species long attuned to subtle fields. Dogs, living within human emotion daily, translate these invisible signals into behavior, an evolutionary language of empathy and intuition. We once domesticated wolves to guard and hunt. Now perhaps they are domesticating us, teaching the very empathy we've forgotten. Look closely and you'll see it everywhere. Therapy dogs easing airport panic, pets calming veterans, rescues choosing their humans. Each act a quiet miracle. Each moment another note in the grand symphony of awakening. Cayce believed animals were co-teachers in the evolution of the soul. Dogs, he said, would demonstrate the purest form of spiritual alignment, living entirely in the present, forgiving instantly, loving without condition. If enlightenment had a sound, it might be the sigh of a dog resting beside you, at peace, in the moment, already home. Right now, millions of dogs around the world are operating as energetic healers, telepathic partners, and spiritual guides. Cayce's prophecy was not a distant dream. It was a preparation for the time we are living in. The question is no longer if it's happening, but whether we are awake enough to recognize it. If this episode opened your eyes to what your dog might really be, subscribe to Mystic Podcast Cruise for more Cayce files, real-world stories, and hidden metaphysical truths. What's the most unexplainable thing your dog has ever done? Tell us in the comments. Your story might be featured in a future episode.